Hot take. A piece of commentary typically produced quickly in response to a recent event whose primary purpose is to attract attention. Football social media is absolutely covered with hot take after hot take, with each being worse than the last. So of course, I did a community post asking for some of your football hot takes, and I'm going to try and explain why they're actually true. The one problem is, a lot of them look like this. Yeah, this might be harder than I expected. Now before we get onto the more, let's say, controversial ones, I'm going to ease everyone in with this take about Juan Mata. And to be honest, I don't think this should be classified as a hot take, because it's simply just correct. Now I'd imagine that the majority of people watching this video now will have watched Juan Mata at the peak of his powers, and so don't need me to explain just how good he was, but for those of you that may have been too young, I'd buckle in if I were you. Having come through the Real Madrid Castilla side, I guess it's unsurprising that Mata would turn out to be a great player, but he was always a level above the rest. Aged just 19, Juan Mata instantly broke into a Valencia side featuring the likes of David Villa, becoming one of the best players in the team, bagging 9 goals and getting 2 assists in a season of absolute turmoil, where 3 different managers would be in the dugout. Not only this, but he scored the opening goal in the Copa del Rey final, which they would go on to win, when, as I mentioned, he was just a teenager. Then, by the time he joined Chelsea in 2011, he was already a World Cup winner and quite possibly the best player in La Liga outside of Barcelona and Real Madrid. All that being said though, he joined a Chelsea side which had won 10 major honours in the previous 7 seasons and had a squad featuring the likes of Didier Drogba, Fernando Torres, Frank Lampard, John Terry, Michael Essien and so on, meaning that it'd probably take the midfielder a little while to break into the team, especially given it's his first year in English football. Oh wait, never mind, he'd be voted as the side's Player of the Year in the campaign where they won both the FA Cup and their first ever Champions League, whilst also having the second highest number of assists in the Premier League. The next year he doubled down on this, winning Player of the Year for the 2nd season in a row, guiding Chelsea to Europa League success before ultimately Mourinho came in and froze the Spaniard out. After moving to Man United, he never quite reached the same level, but was still an incredible player nonetheless, and was probably slightly underappreciated given he was often having to play in some of the most boring and defensive teams in the club's history. And so, as I mentioned, this is actually a very solid take, especially compared to some of the other things I'd been seeing on that community post. Of course, some people will say that everyone who watched him rated him highly and so that he wasn't underrated, but given he was by far the star performer over a 2-year spell which saw Chelsea's greatest ever players at the club, it's undeniable that he's not given as much credit online as he deserves. Now as I spoke about, that was the easy one, because these get a little bit out of hand from now. Never in my 20 years of existence on this planet have I ever seen 7 words be so tantalizingly despicable. In fact, I can't even look at this anymore. So let me swap it out for one about the same topic that I can entertain for a little bit longer. Now this comment is a very weird one because it's both undeniably true, but also probably for the wrong reasons and is almost certainly somebody trying to downplay Pele. Now before I say the next sentence, if you're watching this and you're Brazilian, I'd probably mute the video now for a little while, just for your own safety. I'll put some text on screen when you can come back. If we're talking solely of if you had a prime Messi and Ronaldo, as they were, with no differences in technology, training, knowledge and equipment, and put them all the way back into the late 1950s and early 60s when this man was at his best, then of course, Messi and Ronaldo would both be better than Pele. And in fact, it probably wouldn't even be close. But there is a huge problem with this statement. Oh yeah, and welcome back to all the Brazilians watching. The statement on screen now is either wrong or just simply misleading. Well, to be fair, I did actually have to cut some of it out because it's a very long comment. But still, it's simply unfair and wrong to say that Messi and Ronaldo are better than Pele, if you're simply saying it because the quality of football now is better than it was then. The fact is, football is forever evolving, and so of course, given a near 50-year head start, the players coming down the line will undeniably technically be more capable, but it does not mean that they're better than Pele. To put it simply, if Pele was born in the late 80s, there is no doubt in my mind at all that he would have been at the same level as Messi and Ronaldo across the 2010s. And so just because he was unlucky enough to be born before the huge advances we've seen on the technological and tactical side of things does not make it fair or even right to say that he was worse than those who were born after. Now if we're being honest, you shouldn't really compare players from different generations at all. But if you are going to, then you need to compare everything proportionately, where we can see that Pele showed levels of technical skill and longevity that the world had never seen before, and actually was a huge reason in why Messi and Ronaldo became as good as they were. That being said though, I do think you could fairly make an argument that Messi or Ronaldo were better, but not simply because you'd think they'd rip it apart in 1960s football, because in my opinion, if you gave Pele the same equipment and so on that the other two had, then he'd be at that level as well. Alright, that was a lot of talking, so time for a bit more of a chill one. Now before any West Ham fans or Declan Rice lovers comment about the first thing I say, please just listen to the whole point. Personally, I completely agree with the statement on screen right now, however probably not for the reason you think. Let's not get it twisted, there is no way on planet Earth that Declan Rice, currently playing for 16th place West Ham, would ever have the level of hype he has right now if he still represented Ireland. But the problem is not that Declan Rice, or any English players in fact, are overhyped, it's that Irish talent specifically is actually so underrated right now. You see, for a few years there's been this vendetta against English players online, with people often saying that English stars are overhyped, but the fact is it's really not true. Although sure, some of them may be a bit overpriced. Declan Rice is a near generational talent in his position, who's treated as just someone who could be great. However, if he still played for Ireland, he'd be rated even lower. Let me make this simple. If you know ball, you rate Declan Rice. But at the same time, if you know ball, you also rate Evan Ferguson, Kevin Kelleher, Nathan Collins, etc, etc. Ireland have had a ridiculous amount of talent over the years, with Roy Keane being the only man really appreciated as much as he should have been. And so, although I do agree with the comment on screen, it's probably not for the reason the person commented it. See, given everything you see on social media nowadays, the original person who wrote this probably meant it to say that Declan Rice is not that good and doesn't deserve the hype that he's got, which is something that I can't back at all. Declan Rice is, and has been for a few seasons, one of the best players in the entire world at what he does, and if anything, he's actually being underutilised at West Ham, something that would likely change when he leaves. However, if he still represented Ireland, I'm not too sure if he'd actually ever get to move away from the Hammers, which is where the truth in this comment lies. Now, let's move on to the next hot take. Hopefully it'll be a nice, easy, non-controversial, simple thing to agree with. Why? Seriously, why do you guys do this to me? Now remember that monologue I made earlier about that Pele comment? Just imagine I've said it again here, but even louder. Just for any of you that haven't quite grasped the magnitude of this statement by reading it in your head, let me speak it out loud for you. Cristiano Ronaldo is barely even in the top 10 greatest players of all time. That is ridiculous. I think people have genuinely forgotten how much of a beast this man was. At age 18, he was so good in a friendly where he was likely playing at half of his normal level against the most successful and best team in English football history that the greatest manager of all time had no choice but to sign him. By the age of 21, he'd hit his stride in the most physical and best league in the world, smashing a scoring record whilst playing on the wing. He then earned himself the most expensive move in football history at the time, to become the talisman of the most successful side ever, whilst aged younger than Marcus Rashford is now. Oh yeah, and he then stayed at a level so high for so long that at age 33 he was still good enough to command a fee of over 100 million. And the person on screen right now is saying he's barely even in the top 10. To put that into perspective, at the same age where Cristiano Ronaldo had been purchased for 100 million, the other Ronaldo was playing in Brazil. Now, I'm assuming most people watching now will agree that Kylian Mbappe will almost certainly end up as one of the top 10 players of all time come the end of his career. And so to say that Ronaldo barely makes that accolade is ridiculous, given him and Mbappe at the same age are unbelievably similar. In fact, if anything, Ronaldo had far more to his game, able to play a bigger role in the build-up of a move, rather than just in transitions, which is where right now Mbappe is at his best. Now, in no way am I trying to slate Mbappe. In fact, right now I'd have him as the joint best player in the entire world. But that's exactly my point. If a 24-year-old Ronaldo is better than the man who's currently the best in the world, and then got even better, then it's absolutely clear he's undeniably in the top 10 of all time, and is definitely, in my opinion, somebody who everyone should have in their top 5 minimum. And so, for anyone that disagrees, I have just one thing to say for you. Open Twitter, type in this username, click follow, come back here, like, subscribe and comment, because this is the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Hey, just see what I did there. Anyways, if you're new around here, as I mentioned, subscribe and follow my socials link in description. But most importantly of all, enjoy your day.